Hi there and welcome to another video from Hegarty Maths. It's Mr. Hegarty here, and in this video we're talking about square and cube roots. To start with, pause the video and fill in the missing numbers in the squares. Well, hopefully you realise the answers were 25, positive 36, positive 27 and negative 27. Now what was I asking you for in this slide? Well, basically I was asking for you to square 5 and give me the answer 25, and square 6 and give me the answer 36, and cube, so raise 3 to the power of 3, times it by itself 3 times, and cube negative 3, so multiply it by itself 3 times. So here I was asking you to square or cube a number. Next slide. Pause the video and try and fill in the missing number in the box. Both numbers have to be the same. Okay, hopefully you got these answers. Now this is really important. What same number multiplies to 9? Well, yes, 3, I'd expect you to get that. But did you remember negative 3 also does? Negative 3 multiplied by negative 3 gives you positive 9. And negative multiplied by negative gives a positive. Same here, 6 and negative 6 were the two answers. With 27, only one unique number cubes to 27, that's 3. We don't have to worry about negatives, because a negative multiplied by negative is a negative in the case of negative 4 cubing to negative 64. Now what was I asking you on this slide? Well, I was giving you the answer, wasn't I? And I was asking you what same number multiplied to give that answer, or what same number multiplied together 3 times to give the answer. So I was asking you to go backwards. Up here I was asking you to what we call square root 9 and 36. Tell me what number multiplies by itself to give you 9 and 36. And down here I was asking you to do a cube root. What number multiplied by itself 3 times gives you 27 and negative 64. And that's what this video is all about. So just to explain that a little bit more, we have already learnt how to square numbers. Say we took 3 and negative 3, squaring them, which we write like that, means taking 3 and multiplying it by itself. Squaring negative 3 means take negative 3 and multiplying it by negative 3. In both cases we get the answer 9. Now what's square root all about? Square root takes the answer 9 and it gets you back the two numbers that multiply by themselves to give you 9. And the way we show it, we have a symbol for it. This symbol here means square root. Okay, so that symbol there means square root. And you've got to be careful when you take square roots. You've got to have a positive square root and you've got to have a negative square root, because positive times positive gives you a positive 9, but also negative 3 multiplied by negative 3 would have given you a positive 9. So when you take these square roots, you take a positive and a negative, you think, right, what multiplies by itself to get 9? 3, and so there's the answer, and we've got negative 3 here as well. So that's what the process of a square root is, and it's important you realise square root is the inverse to squaring. To square, you take a number 3, you square it and get 9. Square root is you get the number 9 and you work backwards and find what number multiplied by itself to get you 9. So it is the inverse. They are both the inverse of each other. What's cube root? Very similar. You take a number like 2, you multiply it by itself 3 times, that's the process of cubing, you get 8. The really good thing about cubing is negatives multiplied by themselves 3 times to give a negative, so you always get a unique answer here for any number you cube. Going backwards, you start with the two cube numbers, you cube root them, okay, you don't have to worry about a positive and negative sign, and do note here we've got a symbol for cube root. That's our symbol, because if we just write that we would have square root. We have to realise that we're thinking of what number multiplies by itself 3 times to get 8, or negative 8 in this case. And after we've done a cube root, we get the answer back 2 and negative 2. They were the numbers that cubed up to 8 and negative 8. So again, cube root is the inverse of cubing. Last thing, bit of notation before we do some questions, and this is quite important. If someone asked you what is the square root of 9, if someone asked you what same number goes in the boxes, and someone wrote positive and negative square root 9 here, it all means the same thing. It is saying to you what numbers multiply by themselves twice to get 9, and you've got to remember that it's 3 and negative 3. Here would be 3 multiplied by 3 could be one set of answers, or negative 3 multiplied by negative 3. And here, because we've got the positive and negative sign here, we are getting asked what is the positive square root of 9, which is 3, and what is the negative square root of 9, which is negative 3. So all these three things are the equivalent way of asking the square root of 9, but they want both the positive square root of 9 and the negative square root of 9. Now sometimes you will just see this written, root 9. That is just, there's really a hidden positive sign there, that is just asking you for the positive square root of 9, which is 3. And if you ever see negative root 9, that's asking you for the negative square root of 9, which is negative 3. So just be careful. If you see it like that, they just want the positive one. If you see it like that, they just want the negative. If you see the question in any of these forms, you have to state both the positive and the negative answer. Okay, so I think now we're ready to try some questions. Let's give it a go. What's the square root of 64? So what number multiplies by itself twice to get you 64? Well, in that case we have to say the answer is 8, but also it's negative 8, isn't it? What's the square root of 225? Well, it must be 15 and negative 15, because both multiply by themselves to get positive 225. Write down the cube root of 64. What number multiplies by itself 3 times to get you 64? Well, hopefully you realize only one number does that, it's 4. And the cube root of negative 125, what number multiplies by itself 3 times to get you negative 125? Hopefully you can see the answer is negative 5. Okay, sometimes you're asked the square root of 37. Now, you'll notice the calculator suddenly on the page, and let me explain why. The square numbers up here are 1, 4, 9, etc. That means, like in the case of, let's say, 36, we know 6 multiplied by 6 is 36. So the square root of 36, going backwards, must give us the answer 6, and also negative 6. But 37 is not a square number, so if we square root it, it's going to be some decimal, and we're allowed to get our calculator out and type square root, there's a button for it, 37, and you can see that it's a decimal answer. So let me just write down 6.08 dot 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 dot. But do remember, there must also be the negative version of that, negative 6.08 dot 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 dot. Now the cube root of 65, let's think of the cubes. The cube numbers up here are as follows. Now 65 is not one of the cube numbers, so therefore if we cube root 65 we'll get a decimal. Time to get the calculator out, and calculator has a cube root button. Shift that button there, you see cube root 65, hit it in the calculator and we get that there. Okay, so I'm going to write down 4.02 dot dot dot, but I'm not going to write a negative answer because cube roots only would have one particular answer, and that's it. So let's try another question. If someone asked us to evaluate the following, let's have a go at doing that. Here we've just seen root 9, they just want the positive root of 9, same here. So all we've got to do is say that is equal to 3, and they're asking us to work out 7 add 3, and therefore they're asking us for the answer 10. Here it's just the positive square root of 9, which is 3, and 7 take away 3 is 4. This means what's the cube root of 216? If you know your cube numbers, then you should know that this is equal to, and the cube root of negative 27 is going to be negative 3. Okay? Right, imagine someone asks you to evaluate the following. The square root of 9 squared. Well, on the one hand, you can work out 9 squared, it's square root of 81, and we know the square root of 81 is 9. And similarly here, someone might ask you the square root of 25, work that out and then square it. So the square root of 25 is 5, and we must square it, and we get 25. Now do you notice something here? 9 squared square rooted gives me the answer 9. 25 square rooted and then all squared gives me 25. Why? Well, because square and square root are inverse functions. Imagine this thing here. You started with 9, then you squared it and got 9 squared, which was 81, right? And then what you did is you're asking yourself what number multiplies by itself to give me 81. So you're undoing the process when you're doing a square root. And so a square and a square root, because they're inverse, if you see them together, you just get your answer 9 back. Similarly here, if you square root a number, i.e. square root 25, what number multiplies by itself to give you 25, and then you square the thing again, you're going to get your 25 back. So when I look at things like that, I immediately look at that and say the answer is 9. And if I see a square root and a square together, I say the answer is 25. And that's it for this video. Thanks for watching.